Itaewon at 9 p.m. is not a place for children. The neon bleeds into puddles. The music from competing bars crashes into each other, creating noise that isn't quite any song. Crowds move in that particular weekend, urgency of people determined to feel something before midnight. A boy, 5 years old, had been walking for 40 minutes before anyone noticed he was alone. He moved through all of it like a small ghost. His name was Park Seo-jun. He was wearing a navy coat that had cost more than most people's monthly rent and small shoes that lit up at the heel with every step. Blue lights blinked steadily as he walked. Nobody follows them. Nobody counting them. He wasn't crying. That was the thing that made him invisible. Crying children attract attention. Seo-jun had stopped crying approximately 3 months ago, the day after his mother's funeral, and had not started again since. His father's security team had noted this in their reports with professional concern. The family psychiatrist had used words like complicated grief and emotional withdrawal. What they meant, though none of them said it plainly, was that the boy had gone somewhere inside himself and closed the door. He was looking for his mother. Not in any way he could have articulated. He was 5. He didn't have the language for what he was doing. But she loved Itaewon. Had brought him here on Saturday afternoons for Tteokbokki from a specific stall run by an old woman who always gave him extra fish cake. And tonight he had slipped away from his minder during a moment of phone distraction, and his feet had simply known where to go. He stopped in front of a closed Tteokbokki stall. Wrong one, or maybe right one, he couldn't tell. He stared at it. His small hands hung at his sides. His shoes blinked blue against the wet pavement. Around him the city roared, moved, and paid him absolutely no attention. Amara was a nurse at Severance Hospital, surgical ward, and the shift had been the kind that reminds you why you chose this work and simultaneously makes you question every decision that led to this moment. She was walking home because the subway felt like too much noise for what remained of her energy, and walking gave her the 20 minutes of transition she needed between the person she was at work and the person she was allowed to be at home. She almost walked past him. What stopped her was not that he was alone, though he was. What stopped her was his stillness. In all that Itaewon motion, this small boy was completely, unnaturally still. Standing in front of a closed food stall staring at nothing with the focused emptiness of someone conducting a search that has no real hope behind it. She had seen that stillness before. In rooms. In patients who had received news that rearranged their entire understanding of what their life was. She had not expected to see it in a 5-year-old on a Saturday night street. She stopped. Crouched to his level. In standard Seoul Korean, she said, "Hey, little one. Are you lost? Where is your mother?" He didn't react. Not even a blink. She tried again. Same dialect. Same thing. She looked at his coat. His shoes. The quality of everything he was wearing spoke a very specific language about who his family was. She looked at his face. Something in his expression, in the particular shape of his stillness, made her try something different. She switched to Gyeongsang dialect. The dialect of the southeastern provinces of Busan and Daegu and the coastal cities. Rougher at its edges, warmer in its textures, the dialect of people who say what they mean without decoration. "Yeah, little one. Talk to me. I won't bite." His eyes moved. Just slightly. A fractional shift in focus, like a radio finding the edge of a signal. She leaned closer. "Is this your favorite Tteokbokki place?" she asked, still in Gyeongsang dialect, her voice dropping to something conversational and unhurried, as if they had all night, as if she was not exhausted, as if this was exactly where she intended to be. "Mine too. The fish cake here is better than anywhere." His mouth opened. Then closed. Then, in a voice so small it was nearly swallowed by the street noise, in Gyeongsang dialect that carried the specific intonation of a child who had learned it not from a city but from one particular person in private spaces. "My Ioma used to bring me here." Used to? Past tense. From a 5-year-old. Amara sat down completely on the wet pavement in her nurse's scrubs without a second thought. Eye level with him now. Close enough that he could see her face clearly in the neon light. Your Eoma has good taste, she said carefully, matching his dialect precisely, her voice making no sudden moves. What's your name? He looked at her for a moment. She could see him deciding. Could see the internal calculation of a child who has been told not to talk to strangers fighting against something more urgent than that instruction. Seo-jun, he said. Seo-jun, she repeated, giving it the exact weight and music his mother would have given it. I'm Amara. Are you hungry? He nodded. One small movement. Okay, let's go find something warm. She stood up slowly and held out her hand. He looked at it for 3 full seconds. Then he put his hand in hers. A small warm weight that she felt somewhere behind her sternum. They walked. Around them, the people who had walked past him for 40 minutes continued walking, unaware that anything had happened. She took him to her apartment because it was 7 minutes away and the nearest police station was 23, and he was shivering now that the stillness had broken. She made him ramen and sat across from him at her small kitchen table while he ate with the serious concentration of a child who has discovered he is very hungry. She did not bombard him with questions. She learned this from the patients. When someone has gone somewhere inside themselves and is slowly coming back, you don't demand the journey. You just make the destination worth arriving at. She asked him one question while he ate. What did your Eoma call you? At home. When it was just you two. He looked up from his ramen. Junie, he whispered. Junie, she said, in a voice that she shaped carefully to carry warmth without sadness, comfort without pity. Eat your ramen before it gets cold. He ate. At some point she turned on the television to fill the silence and found a nature documentary about the ocean that neither of them watched but both found useful. At some point she found a spare blanket and put it around his shoulders. At some point he moved from the chair to the sofa and she sat beside him and he leaned gradually, incrementally, the way small children test weight before committing it, until he was against her side. His shoes stopped blinking. He had fallen asleep. She sat very still. In her 14-hour shift she had assisted in 2 surgeries, managed for difficult family conversations, and held the hand of an elderly patient during a procedure that the patient was frightened of. She was exhausted in a way that lived in her bones. She didn't move. She didn't move for 3 hours because he was sleeping soundly for what she suspected was the first time in months, and she was not going to be the reason that stopped. Outside, the city was tearing itself apart looking for him. Park Sung-jin had built his empire on control. At 41 he ran the largest private security and logistics operation in South Korea, which was the legitimate description of a network that the Korean National Police Agency had been investigating without sufficient evidence for 11 years. He had survived 3 assassination attempts, 2 government inquiries, and 1 very public scandal that would have destroyed a smaller man. He had not survived his wife. Minit-ji had died of an aneurysm at 34 with no warning and no preparation and no grace period. She had kissed Seo-jun goodnight on a Tuesday and was gone before Wednesday. Sung-jin, who had faced the worst of human threat with documented composure, had stood in a hospital corridor and been unable to speak for 40 minutes. What happened after was quieter and therefore worse. He functioned. He managed. He ran his empire and handled his son's grief and attended meetings and signed documents and did everything required of him. And underneath all of that he was managing a loss so large he could only approach it sideways, in small glances, because looking directly at it felt fatal. And now his son was missing. His entire security apparatus was deployed across Itaewon. 40 men with photographs and earpieces moving through every street and alley. He was in the back of an armored vehicle receiving updates every 3 minutes. His face, which was not a face that typically displayed much, was showing things his security chief had never seen on it before. By midnight they had nothing. By 2 am they had nothing. At 6 am they began putting up posters. Amara woke at 4 am with a stiff neck and a small boy still asleep against her side. She had managed to angle herself enough to sleep lightly, in the way she'd learned to sleep during long hospital shifts. She looked at his face in the quiet dark. Without the weight of his grief, he looked entirely 5 years old. His eyelashes. His slightly open mouth. The way his hand had found the edge of her blanket and was holding it. She thought about her own childhood. Moving between places. Between languages. Between people who were sometimes kind and sometimes not and always temporary. She thought about the specific loneliness of a child who doesn't know how to say what they need in any language that the people around them can hear. She thought about him. At 6 a.m. she called the police non-emergency line and reported that she had a lost child who appeared to be safe and well. They took her address efficiently and told her someone would come. She made him breakfast before they arrived. Eggs and toast and the banana she'd been saving, cut into the small circles that she had noticed children preferred for no logical reason. He woke to the smell of it and came to the table in his navy coat that he had apparently decided to keep on all night, and ate with the same serious concentration as the night before. "Did you sleep okay, Junie?" she asked. He considered this with unexpected thoughtfulness for a 5-year-old. "I didn't have the dream," he said. She didn't ask what the dream was. "Good," she said simply. He looked at her across the small table. "Are you going to disappear?" he asked. The question arrived without warning and landed precisely on the sorest part of her. "I'm going to eat this egg," she said, matching his seriousness. "And then the people who are looking for you are going to come and take you home. And that is a good thing, Junie, even when good things are also hard things." He thought about this. "Okay," he said, and ate his banana. She was late. The police had come, and then people in suits who were clearly not police, and there had been a process of verification and documentation that had taken longer than she expected, and now she was 40 minutes behind and running. She was at the corner of her street, bag on her shoulder, when she stopped. His face. On the wall beside the convenience store. Printed on white paper in the slightly blurry urgency of something made at 3 in the morning. His navy coat. His shoes. His serious small face. Park Seo-jun, age 5. Missing since 9 p.m. Saturday. And below that, a phone number. And below that, a number that made her blink. She stood on the pavement and looked at the reward figure for a moment. She thought about her apartment with its single window. She thought about the hospital debt she was still managing from her training. She thought about the broken heating element she hadn't replaced yet because it wasn't the right month for that expense. She called the number. It rang once. A man answered immediately. Controlled voice. Exhausted underneath the control. She said in Korean, "My name is Amara Osei. I'm the nurse who found your son last night. He's safe. He slept well and he had breakfast. He mentioned a Tteokbokki stall on the south end of Itaewon that I think was important to his mother. You should take him there when he's ready." The reward, the man began. "I don't want it," she said. Simply. Without drama. "I want to get to my shift before my manager loses patience with me. Please take care of him." She hung up. She was 12 minutes late to work. Her manager gave her a look. She apologized and picked up a chart and began her day. Park Sung-jin sat in his vehicle for a long time after the call ended. His security chief waited. His assistant waited. His head of operations waited. He looked at the phone in his hand. He replayed the call with the precision of a man trained to analyze information. A nurse. A black woman speaking fluent Korean. Who had kept his son through the night, fed him, let him sleep, and called at 6 a.m. to report him safe. Who had asked for nothing. Who had hung up to go to work. He thought about Seo-jun, who had not voluntarily touched another person since Minute-ji died. Who his security chief had described sitting in her apartment this morning holding the edge of her blanket even after he was awake. He said to his security chief, "Find out everything about her." What they found was this. Amara Osei, 29. Born in Ghana. Moved to Korea at age 11 when her mother married a Korean man from North Gyeongsang province, the mountainous inland region whose dialect is considered one of the most distinct and difficult in the country. She grew up speaking it at home. Moved to Busan for university and picked up Gyeongsang coastal dialect through 5 years of daily immersion. Worked during her nursing studies at a long-term care facility in Jeonju, Jeolla province, where the majority of her patients were elderly and spoke only in the Jeolla dialect, known for its musicality and unique vocabulary. Learned it out of refusal to let her patients be unreached. Spent 1 clinical placement year in Jeju Island, where the dialect is so distinct from Standard Korean that linguists classify it as a separate language. Learned enough to communicate with elderly Jeju patients who had no one else who could understand them. For dialects. All learned for reasons that had nothing to do with ambition and everything to do with the simple determination that the people in front of her should not feel alone. When this information reached the Korean internet, through channels that were never fully explained, it did not travel slowly. A black Ghanaian nurse who speaks for Korean regional dialects including Jeju, which most Koreans cannot speak. Who learned each one specifically so that patients no one else could reach would not be unreachable. Who found a missing child in Itaewon and spoke to him in the dialect of his dead mother and brought him home and asked for nothing. The story moved the way only true things move. Without spin. Without a campaign behind it. 1 share, then 1,000, then a number that stopped being countable. He came to the hospital. Not with a check. Not with lawyers. Not with the apparatus of power that he deployed for everything else. He came alone, or nearly alone, 1 security officer at a distance, in clothes that were expensive but not demonstrative, at 7 in the evening when her shift ended. He was standing in the hospital car park when she walked out. She stopped when she saw him. She recognized him from the photograph on the poster. Taller than she expected. The face of a man who had learned to show nothing and was currently failing at it. She waited. He crossed the car park. Stopped in front of her. He was a man who had not been uncertain in a professional context in 15 years, and he was uncertain now in a way that was visible and apparently unsolvable. He said in Korean, "My son spoke at dinner last night." Full sentences. He told me about the ocean documentary. He told me you sat still for 3 hours so you wouldn't wake him. She said nothing. He asked me this morning, Sung-jin continued, if the lady who speaks like Ioma could come for Tteokbokki. Amara looked at him with a nurse's eyes. The kind developed through years of receiving information and deciding quickly what it requires. How is he? She asked. Better, Sung-jin said. Then he has been in 3 months, because of 1 night. He did the work, I just used the right language. Sung-jin looked at her for a moment. Then he did something that his security officer, who had worked for him for 9 years, had never seen and would describe later to his wife with an expression of complete bewilderment. Park Sung-jin lowered himself to 1 knee on the hospital car park pavement. In his good coat. In front of a nurse in scrubs who was carrying a tote bag with a broken strap. He said, "My son needs someone who can reach him. I have money and power and neither of them speaks his language right now. You do. I am not able to offer you a transaction because what I am asking for cannot be bought. So I am asking. Simply asking. Would you be willing to be part of his life? To be present. To speak to him. To be for him whatever you are able to be." The car park was not silent. Hospitals are never silent. Somewhere nearby a car alarm was going off. A group of nurses was walking past talking about dinner. The ordinary world continuing its ordinary business. Amara looked down at this man on his knee. She thought about a small boy who used past tense at 5 years old. Who had stopped crying as a strategy for surviving grief. Who had put his hand in hers after 3 seconds of calculation and slept without the dream. She thought about the question he had asked her at breakfast. Are you going to disappear? She had spent her entire life learning languages so that people who felt unreachable could be reached. She had learned them 1 at a time, out of stubbornness and refusal and the simple belief that nobody should have to be alone in their own language. She had not expected this to be where they led. "Get up, please." He stood. "I want to be clear about something," she said. "I am a nurse. I work long shifts and I have bad weeks and I am not a replacement for his mother and I never will be. And he needs to understand that she is irreplaceable. That missing her is right and correct and not something to be fixed." "Yes," Sung-jin said. "And I want to take him to that Tteokbokki stall. The right one. Wherever it is. And talk about her there. Because she loved it and that love belongs to him." Something moved across Sung-jin's face. Fast and unguarded and then controlled again, but she had seen it. "Yes," he said again. Then "yes," she said. "For Seo-jun." "Yes." The following Saturday, a man who was feared by people who were themselves feared by ordinary people, sat at a small plastic table in Itaewon eating tteokbokki with his son and a Ghanaian nurse who was arguing with Seo-jun about whether he should eat the fish cake before or after the rice cake, in Gyeongsang dialect, which Seo-jun was apparently already attempting to imitate. The old woman running the stall watched them. She had run this stall for 31 years. She had seen many things. She had not seen this before. She gave the boy extra fish cake without being asked. Some things transcend every language. But it helps, it genuinely helps, when someone takes the time to learn yours. Amara eventually took a position as a private medical coordinator for the Park household, which she negotiated herself, with a contract, boundaries clearly stated, and a salary that she researched to ensure was fair. She continued her shifts at Severance 2 days a week because she had patients there who needed her. Seo-jun started speaking in full sentences. Then paragraphs. Then the kind of relentless detailed monologues that are the natural state of 6-year-olds who have found someone safe to talk to. He began teaching his father words in Jeju dialect, which he learned from Amara, which Sung-jin learned from his son, which is perhaps the longest and most worthwhile game of telephone in the history of the Korean language. The Tteokbokki stall became a Saturday ritual. The old woman always gives Seo-jun extra fish cakes. She has never been asked to explain why.